I am in the midst of starting my second book, and I am absolutely terrified. Hello, writing warriors. Welcome or welcome back. My name's Cassie, and I'm the creator of Indie Author Warrior, where I help writers become happier, more empowered creators. Today, we're going to be talking about why writing a book is so daunting, and then I'll share 5 tips on how to make it easier to start. Whether you are attempting to write your first novel, or you're like me and you are embarking on writing your second book, you are in good company. Fear of the blank page is so common, it's almost cliche, but that doesn't make it any less real or valid. Of course we're scared. Writing tens of thousands of words that 1, make sense, and 2, engage the reader can feel like an impossible dream, especially when you're just starting at square one. Getting to step 1752? There's no way you can do that. It feels way too big. So you decide to save yourself the heartache, keep your story safe, keep it in your head, and keep the dream alive. But you, writing warrior, you don't give up so easy. So here are my 5 tips on how to make starting writing your book easier, even when it's scary. Tip number 1, fall in love. Even before you start writing, there's something in your mind that got you excited about this story, whether that's a character, a specific scene, world building. There's something that's bubbling up inside you that wants to be written. Explore that more. Get excited about it. Fall in love with whatever it is that's grabbing your attention. Because the more you nurture that love and excitement for your story, the harder it will be not to write it. Practical tips on how to do this would be daydreaming is a very simple one. Just sit for 5 or 10 minutes and imagine your story. What do you see? What do you feel? What are your characters dreaming about? What do they want? Another way to do this is with mind mapping and brainstorming, just free writing. I highly recommend doing this with pen and paper and not digitally. Exploring your characters and asking questions. What happens next? What about this? What about that? And another one is Pinterest. Using Pinterest as a way to visualize your story and find different things that represent what your story could look like and feel like, that can act as a really good foundation to get you motivated to jump in and start writing. So that's tip number 1. Fall in love with whatever bits of your story that have got you excited. Tip number 2 is one that works shockingly well for me. And that tip is to keep it a secret. Keep your story a secret, keep your ideas a secret, and tell yourself nobody ever has to read it. You might be going, okay, Cassie, but I want to be an author, and part of being an author is sharing my story and publishing it, right? Yes, of course it is. And eventually, that's what the goal is. That's what we want you to be able to do and do proudly. At this delicate stage of the journey, though, thinking about the end goal and publishing and who your eventual reader will be often puts too much pressure on you in this delicate stage of your story. So by keeping it just to yourself, you protect it from external judgments and external input that you might not be ready for yet. Telling yourself that nobody ever has to read it can be an extremely helpful way to take off the pressure and help you be able to brave that blank page and write those first words in your story, because it's in that protected little sphere. So that's tip number 2. Keep it a secret. Tip number 3 is to put on blinders. If you have ever been around horses, or you've been to a horse race and are familiar with horses, you may have noticed that they'll put blinders on a horse. So the leather or fabric that's to the side of their eyes, so they can't see to the left or to the right. The purpose of that is to keep them focused and so they don't spook, especially in new environments. And as writers, I think we can do the same of putting on blinders to narrow our focus. Because often, at least for me, when we're starting, we can envision the whole picture. We can envision holding the end book in our hands, and we're thinking about all the steps we have to do to get there. And especially if you're just starting, you might not know how to find an editor yet. You might not know how to find a book cover designer and revise your own work, format your novel. Thinking about those pieces is too overwhelming. It takes away from your moment right now of writing. And you can't do those pieces until you have something written. So putting on blinders can be an excellent way of making it easier to start, because you're not worried about any of that extra end stuff that will come later. Right now, you're worried about one scene, one chapter, one sentence, one paragraph. So the practical tip on this one is focusing on writing that one scene. That's all you have to think about. What word comes next? How is this character feeling in the moment? What is happening in the moment? Because the rest will come later. So that's my tip number 3, to put on blinders, narrow your focus, focus just on that one scene, that one sentence, and don't overthink it. Moving on to tip number 4. My tip number 4 is to remember the first pancake. If you have ever made pancakes, you will know that the first one is usually bad. It's either too runny, it's burnt, it's not cooked enough. Something happens that the first pancake is a throwaway pancake. But you'll also know, if you've made pancakes, that you don't stop at the first pancake. You don't throw away the batter after that first one is crap. You keep using the batter, keep making the pancakes, and you get delicious, fluffy, beautiful pancakes by the end of your cooking. In writing, we can also learn from the first pancake, because our writing is the same. When we are first starting out and taking our ideas down to paper or into our laptop, we're bound to have a first pancake. So with this first tip, it's to remind yourself that it doesn't have to be right the first time. It doesn't have to be perfect. And not to give up just because the first pancake looks a little wonky. Otherwise, you'll starve and you'll never have breakfast. So give yourself grace to be able to play and to explore what works and what doesn't work. And know that it might not be great this round, but that's part of the process. You can't have the beautiful, fluffy, delicious pancake without the bad first pancake. So that's tip number 3. Well, nope, we're on tip number 4. So that's tip number 4. Remember the first pancake. Be kind to yourself and allow yourself to make mistakes and be creative in your writing. Next is tip number 5, which is choose the 5-pound dumbbell. What does that mean? If you are going to the gym and you've never been to the gym before, you're not going to immediately try to deadlift 300 pounds, because that will end in injury, that will end in disaster, essentially. You haven't built up the muscles to lift that much because you've never been to the gym before, and you haven't learned proper technique yet to keep yourself safe and to be able to get up to that level of lifting 300 pounds. Writing is the same. If you've never written for 5 minutes straight, or if you've never written consistently for multiple days in a row, it's not usually a great idea to make your goal to write 60 minutes every single day, because that's like trying to lift 300 pounds in the gym. It often sets yourself up for failure or psychological pain. So when you're first starting out and trying to overcome that blank page, the best thing you can do for yourself is start small. Start small, commit to it, and focus on consistency. I'd suggest a starting point of 15 minutes a day if you're trying to build your writing muscles and get into a new habit and a new routine of writing consistently. Once you're able to do that consistently, then you can up your weight goal of move to the 10-pounder, the 20-pounder, etc. You're much more likely to succeed if you start small and build up your confidence as you go. So those are my 5 tips on how to start writing even when it's scary. Know that you have everything you need to acknowledge the fear, work through it, and move forward anyway. If you're looking for more help on your author journey, check out my guides and courses, which I'll have linked in the description below and then also at the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Sincerely, Cassie. Here we go. We are filming? Yes. Yay! Oh! What is tip number 4? Oh, I am sweating. Oh my God.